Welcome to another episode of NeverEndingPanel.com. Tonight we have a very special episode on collaborative writing, and we have some guests who you may be familiar with. If you're not, you probably shouldn't be at the site watching NeverEndingPanel.com. To my left is Dr. Jerry Pournelle, John W. Campbell Award winner, Prometheus Award winner, Heinlein Society Award winner, multiple Hugo nominee, and oft-times co-collaborator with Steve Barnes and Larry Niven, who I will now shortly introduce. To the left of Dr. Pournelle is Steve Barnes, who is an author, lecturer. His very first published novel, in fact, was nominated for a Hugo, and it was called The Locust, and he wrote it with Larry Niven, of all people. Steve is a writer. He's a hypnotherapist. He is a martial and physical artist, and as I said before, I'm glad that I'm I have a body between me and Steve in case I accidentally offend Steve, because he could drop me before I take a first breath. And to the left of Steve is, of course...
You are implying that Steve is more dangerous than I am.
Aha! Well, that's secret government stuff. I knew you weren't just advising the president.
You are also implying that he is more irritable than I am.
I'm kind of liking the way this is going.
And that is almost certainly not a true inference.
All right, so the winner of the Irritability Award goes to Dr. Pournelle, and then we move on to Larry Niven. Larry Niven is, of course, the author of Ringworld, 5-time Hugo Award winner, known for many ideas. Probably the most popular, not popular of which, but he's most known for the creation of alien species and how well he manages to do that. To the left of Larry Niven is, of course, my brother and fellow bonehead, Eytan Kollin, co-author of The Unincorporated Man, a book by Tor, and also my collaborative writing partner. So, as I said, or back up a second so that Bond can cut that out, since I didn't say it before, since we're starting time all over again.
But the spontaneity is gone.
Right. Eytan and I got into this because we realized as collaborators there was no way that we could do this writing by ourselves. Together we made a team, and that's how it worked. And really what I want to know from the authors who are here now is, what was it that compelled them to get into a writing partnership when really... most people don't expect that, and they look at you kind of strange when you say you write with somebody else. There's a sort of sense of ownership that you need to own it. So what compelled you guys to get into writing with somebody else, sharing the glory, so to speak? Anybody can answer at any time.
I answered second the first time, so I'll answer first the second time. I was a writer from the time I was a kid, but after having written, several 100,000 words and not getting where I wanted to go in my career, I decided that the easiest and best way to increase my skill at something was to find someone who was better at it than I am and find out what it was that they were doing that I wasn't doing. And I found that Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle came to the Las Vegas Clubhouse on Thursday nights. So I came up here on a Thursday with the intention to make their acquaintance and do everything I possibly could to find out what it was, how they thought about writing, how they approached it. And I was incredibly fortunate enough to become friends with them, and just as fortunate to have the opportunity to work with them and thereby observe at extremely close range, horrifyingly close range at times.
Got it. Mr. Niven?
I had... My first collaboration was with David Gerrold, famed for Star Trek episodes.
And the movie Martian Child.
Much later.
All right.
At the time, we worked together for fun. I'd invited him over for dinner. We got to talking. We raced off to an encyclopedia to look up mauve and see what the definition was, and we worked a pun from that. And extrapolated a gigantic, first a thick novelet, and then a gigantic novel from the pun built around as a color shade of purple gray.
Really?
For Asimov. Yes.
The entire thing came out of one pun.
Well, no, out of one dinner at any rate.
Okay.
Which started with a pun, apparently.
The title came out of one pun, I guess. Yes. I liked collaborating, it turned out. So when Jerry suggested we write a novel, I leapt at it. And he tossed in his empire of 1,000 worlds, and I tossed in an alien that hadn't worked out in a novel. And working on those, we had the novel pretty well carved out one drunken night on Irish coffee, on not Irish coffee, coffee and brandy. I taught Jerry to pour brandy in his coffee.
Yep. Never recovered.
The book then took 3 years. We won the Losfus's award for best unfinished novel twice running.
I didn't know such an award existed.
They had made it up for
Oh,
us.
okay.
My case was simple. I decided I wanted to get famous a little faster. And the easy way to do that would be to find somebody who was already famous but who wasn't doing everything he could do, and that I could do what they weren't doing. And turned out there were 2 people that I was pretty sure that I could work with. One was an old friend, Paul Anderson, but he lived in the Bay Area, and that wasn't going to work. The other was a guy I'd never met, but I had read his works and decided, yep, we could do something. And so I tracked Larry down and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. I basically said, stick with me and I'll make you rich and famous. He said, I'm already rich. I said, that's fine. My objective is to get rich. We can both get famous. And it worked. I guess just outside of the film world, where collaborations are fairly standard, in literary world, I think we probably sold as many copies as Nordhoff and Hall, for instance, and Ellery Queen, which was 2 people, have probably made a bit more money than Larry and I, but not a lot. So it worked.
Were you friends with Larry prior to pitching
Never
him?
met him.
Never met him?
Never met him until I decided that. Actually, I talked the subject over with Dan Alderson, and he said, you ought to look up Larry Niven. And I looked at his stories and said, you're right.
I have a question. I've had people come up to me because I got one grand total novel published, and I've had people come up to me and say, wow, can I work with you? Mm-hmm. To which one case actually, kind of yes, because he's a very interesting person, why not? But most of the time it's like, That being said, I imagine you 2 must have had lots and lots and lots of people wanting to come up and work with you.
You 3.
What was it about Steve? No, because Steve got in.
Well,
what was it about?
Got in.
So what was it about Steve?
Steve
that
slept with
actually?
him. No.
What was the bribe? 50-year-old Scotch? What? I mean, just,
I came up with a notion. I'll toss it out to you for free. I had a novelet that I'd tried to write something close to 10 years earlier. I showed this failed novelet to Stephen, and I said, "Can you do anything with this?" Now this is cost free. I've already done all my work. It's not going to hurt me anymore unless he comes up with something. He hasn't done any work. He can simply say no. And he said yes, and he made it work. And that was The Locusts.
and in our case, Larry and I had I had an idea for what I thought was going to be a surefire Hugo-winning novelette. And it was just basically a notion of an EC Comics kind of story. And we got to working on it, and I got to working on it and discovered it was bigger than I thought it was, and asked Larry if he'd be interested, and he liked the idea. We got to working on it, and it turned out to be bigger than we had thought it was going to be, and about that time Steve was around, and we had... Actually, he handed us an envelope full of short stories, among other things, and Larry and I read them and thought, that's pretty good. It needs some work, but that's... This guy can do things with words and emotions, and...
You didn't know, perhaps, that I took Jerry home to work that same night.
Yeah.